Facebook.
Okay, it looks like we are now streaming live on Facebook.
Hello, world.
Hello, world, and welcome to an episode of Music, Philosophy, and More. This is episode 9 with a returning guest, my good friend Tommy Z.
Lucky number 9.
Yes, yeah. Actually, in something I learned about recently, 9 is like uh, quite a special number, like its completion number.
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
yeah.
All right, cool. So it looks like we're live. If you do, you don't have to, but if you want to pull up another um, tab on your
Right.
Safari, if you of Facebook, you could see if it's on your page, or you could actually go to my page and then share it to your page so your friends can find it on your
Yeah.
page. But
Um, we'll
yeah,
do that in a second. Just, we'll see.
sure.
Let's. I guess we'll get on the way here.
All right. All right, cool. So we have we have a couple questions. So anyway, first of all, it is Good Friday today. Was there
Yes.
anything that you did that was special today?
Well, I had off from work. uh, I, so that's always good. But no, it's funny because I went out yesterday to go get some wine, and then I had seen like some buds on the trees blooming, like flowers and whatnot. Like, oh, there you go, resurrection, first signs of new life. Kind of fitting day for it.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Wow. Yeah, so I'd like to just kind of kick off this uh, discussion and let people know that this is not there's no intention to attack the Catholic Church or any religion or to
just
talk bad about it.
we're sharing ideas. That's all. No.
Yeah, just sharing ideas, reflecting on our own chosen path, which we were similar in the sense that you and I both actually went away from the Catholic Church, but at the same time still cherish it in our hearts in a way.
Yeah. Well, Christianity in general. I guess. Yeah. I mean, how I got into my spiritual path into paganism. I mean, okay, so I was brought up Roman Catholic, of course. Being raised in an Italian family. Italian and Lithuanian, Polish on my dad's side, but Italian on my mom's side. I was a Christmas baby, as probably a lot of people who know me know. So,
Mm-hmm.
like the whole idea of like, okay, the Son of God, um, the Holy Child. That's the story that always stuck out for me. That was very, I guess, strong. And then, I always had a very strong attachment to nature. I was very into reading about mythology when I was a kid, like the stories of like the Greek and Roman gods like coming to Earth and having relations with mortals and fathering children, and like, hey, wait a minute, the gods could walk among men, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was into like the King Arthur stories. Again, there's stories of magic. You have like Merlin like living backward in time and casting magic spells, so Uther could like sleep with the king's bride. And yeah, I got into paganism. Part of it was from kind of a little bit what we talked about the last time was like, okay, 90s subculture, like rock music, alternative thinking, and like, okay, the Craft was like a big movie in like 1996.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it's probably a lot of people that like has a lot of style, and then yeah, it's the three outsider girls, and they find their fourth, and then they start dabbling in magic, and a lot of weird things begin to happen. And around the same time, I had friends that we would start fooling around with Ouija boards, and
Mm-hmm.
weird things begin to happen, like
Sure.
strange dreams. And but the fascination with like magic and arcane power that never really left me. And then my very first girlfriend in about 2000, she had given me two books. One was like a really intro to paganism book, Are You a Pagan at Heart? And then a couple years later, she had me read a text. It's like a feminist retelling of the Arthurian legend. It's called The Mists of Avalon.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman who wrote it, Marion Zimmer Bradley, she incorporates a lot of like occult, esoteric thought and like Wiccan pagan rituals in the story, and it just really like completely resonated with me, like very deeply, and that's when I got really serious into studying about like pagan practice and different traditions, and how to work, how like the old gods of like Greece and Rome and Ireland, how they were worshipped in like ancient times, and how they
Hmm.
could be honored in like let's say in like the modern day,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
So let
but
me
yeah,
chime. So let me chime in for a second and
yeah,
just say that hello to Deanna. Our friend Deanna's chiming in, and she's saying that she's a pagan Hindu,
oh yeah,
and that different religions travel to the same path.
yeah,
Would you agree with that?
oh definitely, definitely, yeah. That's I guess that's like the that's a part of the theme that we're trying to get across. We, we were both seekers, but we went an alternative route from what we were brought up in.
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm. Yeah, I get the image of many. It rains equally
Yeah.
around the land, and there's various rivers and lakes and streams that all eventually end up in the ocean, right? And that
Right.
ocean
Exactly.
being the one source
Yeah. Exactly.
type of thing.
Um,
So
you
I
know,
go ahead,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. No, I mean, I did go through a bit of a phase where I was like in rebellion against like Christianity, the Catholic Church, because one aspect of like paganism, Wicca, like the divine feminine is a big thing. So like, okay, when you learn about all the suppression that the church was involved in like ancient times, or like in the Middle Ages when they were like kind of forcibly converting people, or women weren't allowed to be in the priesthood, or that they were kind of suppressing somewhat the image of like the feminine divine. That kind of, I had like a little bit of a, I won't say a crisis, but I had angst about it for a little while, a couple of years. But
Hmm.
I kind of got through it. Once I started to see a big thing for me was the learning like the concept of Mary, the Blessed Mother. She's like an image of the goddess in
Hmm.
Christian theology. They're kind of equivalent in a sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I sense that Mother Mary is quite a powerful
Yeah,
being, and depending on where you're at, how open-minded someone is, you can
yeah,
see her as a really strong, uh, feminine sort of goddess, if you will.
yeah.
Um, so I do have a question about when you were younger, like let's say long before you read The Mist of Avalon.
Right.
What was your connection? How were you as a Catholic? Like, were you a praying Catholic? Did you go to church?
Like my family wasn't like we were kind of nominal. We weren't like hardcore about it, but like I did like what we call CCD. Like you have all the sacraments. Yeah, we had like religious instruction. My grandparents were more serious about it. Like my grandmother, my mom's mom, she was a big devotee of Saint Anthony. Like
Hmm.
Saint Anthony, for those of you who don't know, he's the saint that helps you find stuff. If you lose your keys, you lose your glasses, you lose your, you forget where you put the salt shaker. You pray to Saint Anthony.
Hmm.
He's the one that helps you find your things. And she always used to say, Saint Anthony's working for you. Then yeah, I think when she had passed a couple of years ago, and when my mom and my aunts were gonna, they were selling our house on East 32nd Street. They buried a card of Saint Joseph. And Saint Joseph is the he's the worker. The Italian people believe that he's the worker, and he helps with like projects, and he's connected with like real estate. So there's like a set, it's like Italian, it's like an Italian folk practice. That's the thing about Catholicism too. There's like a lot of magic still in it.
Hmm.
Like okay, magical traditions, like you pray to the saints for intercession, or you light candles.
Sure.
You do little rituals like the one I'm describing when you need something done.
Yeah, the incense, right?
Exactly.
I remember, I forget which saint it was. I think it was around Valentine's or something. But there's the saint, and I had my throat blessed with two candles. Do you know
Yeah.
that about that? I forget.
Okay.
It's just
It
like
sounds.
saint to protect your throat or something. I forget who
I,
was.
yeah, I've heard of it,
Um,
but I forget the actual saint involved. But yeah. I mean, like I always I never went through a phase of like I don't believe in anything. I always believed in some kind of some kind of power in the
Mm-hmm.
universe. There was always some kind of like mystical, whatever you want to call it. And like the whole story of like, okay, Jesus is especially the nativity, because okay, I'm a Christmas baby, so like, hey, that's me, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, that always spoke to me, even when I was very very little. So I never had like that. Some people go through a phase of like they become very nihilist, or like beyond like atheists, like they don't believe in any kind of. I never had that. I always believed in some kind of higher force. And then I remember doing CCD when I was a kid, and then the nuns in the parish at St. Columba, they would show me the tabernacle where the host was kept, and then you
Mm-hmm.
could kind of feel like the numinousness of it. I still remember that.
Yeah.
Um, so like, I mean, the ritual was always kind of spoke to me too, like the incense, and you see the host being blessed during the Eucharist, and you know, yeah, we were in church a few weeks ago, and we're still seeing a mass that still resonates with me on some level.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Me too.
Hmm. Yeah. So
Um, I took a walk today to mail a couple of letters,
yeah,
cards, and I decided to pass St. Columba
yeah,
and our local church, for those of you who don't know, Marine Park,
yeah,
where I attended Mass there for about
yeah.
3 or 4 years during high school.
Hmm.
And fortunately, there was a service going on. And I say
Yeah,
fortunately because I think people do benefit from getting together, for a
yeah,
spiritual thing. Because it was closed last Easter for sure, with
yeah.
coronavirus and everything.
Hmm.
So that was nice. I thought uh, I don't miss it per se, 'cause I was also thinking as I was walking, and I'll just kind of suggest some of the reasons why I wasn't satisfied with the Catholic religion and why I sought beyond it.
Right.
But still treasure it, and I find it to be
Yeah.
precious. But I was remembering that when I was a kid, that feeling of um, so so Easter was more special when I was a child for sure, and
Of
part of that
course.
was
Yeah.
because of the religious aspect. It was a huge part of it. So you have if you kind of I had to go to church on Easter. Many Catholics do, I think,
Yeah. We
and
used to do it when I was a kid. I remember it was like a thing. Like one of my favorite photos I have when I was a child. I must have been about maybe two.
yeah,
Like wearing the little, because there's an Easter basket in the background, and like I was wearing a little suit, so we must have been going to church. But like you get dressed up, you look as best you can. Um, yeah, like that was one thing I remember. Like you try to go like the bigger holiday, like big night mass on Christmas Eve or Easter Sunday. Especially when I was a kid. We grew up in a predominantly Catholic neighborhood, pretty much.
yeah, right. And I remember the kind of the I won't say torture, but as a kid, I knew for special events it was probably good to go. If I can get
Yeah,
out of it on a normal Sunday, I would try to. But
right.
I remember that feeling of like, oh man, this is gonna be long, and I'm gonna have to be on my best behavior,
Yeah,
and like when's the fun part gonna happen? And it pretty much never did. As I got older, there were parts
right,
about the mass I appreciated, and I kind of look forward
right.
to certain
Uh-huh.
parts. But as a kid, it's kind of none of that, and it was just
Right,
like this kind of sacrifice you make to go through that so then you go have candy and like enjoy the
right, right,
holiday. That's what I
right.
remember feeling like.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like if you think about it, like okay, today I was off from work because the stock market was. For those of you who don't know, I work in financial journalism, so when the markets are closed, my office is closed. So like okay, but we still honor it in a sense, the sacredness of it. You think like Christmas time, like all right, like we have Christmas vacation. A lot of people take off from work. We had off from school. We had Easter break. So it's still kind of honored, even in our like secular society, in a certain sense.
Yeah,
You know?
right, right. Yeah, and I do appreciate that, even though it's certainly feels to me, well, also that being that I've been practicing Buddhism for
Yeah.
11, 12 years almost, and that I've not been a practicing Catholic since
Right.
late 90s, I've certainly lost that spiritual connection to it on some
Yeah.
level,
Uh-huh.
or at least the sort of the Catholic part. But I do sense, in general, perhaps in society, Easter has become a little watered down, or something like that. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
it depends on the person and the group, and
Right.
um,
Well, I think generally now there's more openness to other, other traditions, other religions generally, beyond like, okay, we live, there's other, like, you could say societally, for most people it's predominantly, you know religions beyond Christianity. I would say there's more exposure, awareness of that.
yeah. hmm so I have one question.
Uh-huh.
What do you recall about Good Friday in particular, growing up?
Growing up.
Like when you were still, when you were still identified as Catholic.
Okay. No meat. Actually, yeah, no meat. That was
hmm
always a big thing. Like we had fish, or we just couldn't eat meat. Like we didn't really like. My mom typically doesn't have meat for Lent, but you know, I mean, like every Friday for Lent, but usually Good Friday was like just no. We try not to eat meat that day. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
like a fish dish. That's something I remember. That's something I still kind of keep. To a certain degree.
hmm
Just Good Friday is always like a heavy day in a certain sense. I mean, like Good Friday, if you think about it, like it's not a good thing that happens that day.
Yeah.
uh,
What a misnomer, huh?
it's yeah. Like I remember one of my one I think either when we were in CCD or maybe one of my professors in college, and both times like I don't understand why we call it Good Friday. It's not a good day. Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
like, no, I think earlier today, and I had done this a few years in the past. Like, I would leave on a clip of like this, old like Jesus of Nazareth, or like just old scenes of like depictions of the crucifixion.
hmm
Like,
Yeah.
but just I always remember Good Friday. It's kind of like it's a heavy day. It was always like an intensity, a day of intensity. Like some guy and if we want to debate the historical existence of Christ, of Jesus of Nazareth, that is the one event that is most attested in historical records. Somebody
Yeah.
was crucified that was a religious leader this day. Well, not this day, but the holiday commemorating that event in the
Yeah.
ancient Roman Empire in Judea in 33 AD, whenever it was.
It's certainly something that is just always
Yeah,
amazes me how
yeah,
popular it is, the
right,
story, you know,
right.
like deeply ingrained in the human consciousness.
Right. I mean, it's part of West. It's one of the seminal events of Western civilization
hmm
in a certain sense. I mean, think about it. Like, well, now the common term, like before the Common Era, or after the Common Era. Before it was BC, before Christ, or AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. So that was literally a marking event in time for our culture.
Right. Yeah. Not too many other,
Right.
no other events that I could think of do that,
Right. Right.
have
Right.
done
Exactly.
that.
Hmm.
So just like to say thank you guys for those who are listening. Feel free to chime in with some comments if you have questions for Tommy or myself,
I'm gonna
or
grab water for a second.
yeah, please. Yeah. So as Tommy grabs water, I'm going to uh, broach a subject which I think will be kind of fun. So here's a subject that I think might be a little bit fun to play around with. I do want to get more into the heaviness of Good Friday because I have my own story with that, which actually connects to Inwood Hill, which I think
Oh yeah.
would be fun to discuss here. But so pagan, Catholic, right? We know, well, you and I know. I don't know if everyone how widely it's known, but that there was a lot of crossbreeding certainly with Easter, certainly with Halloween, certainly with Christmas.
Oh, absolutely.
There was a lot of crossbreeding with pagan rituals and cultures and customs and then Catholic rituals, cultures, and customs that kind of got infused and mixed up. So my
Right.
question, we can go in, dive deep with that, but do you think maybe it would have been better if Easter, like the crucifixion, the resurrection, if that was a separate event, and then there was this like solstice type of party with Easter and eggs, and like it's just two separate things? Do you think that would be better in some way?
Right. No, I think that they're very intermingled. I don't think you can fully separate them, especially if you're talking like Roman Catholicism. You know, a lot of there's a lot of pagan elements in Roman Catholic practice. I mean, if you go into like Protestantism, that was an actual movement to remove a lot of the pagan magical elements from Christianity. That was
Mm,
part of the idea of that's what they were protesting against, like Martin Luther or like other that's how that movement got started in Europe. But no, I don't think you can fully separate. Like okay, the think about it though, Christ rising from the dead. It's the springtime. The earth is rejuvenating.
yeah.
We have the whole image of the Easter bunny, which that came from what I understand, that came from German immigrants. They had a figure called like the Easter hare. Basically, it was a rabbit because a rabbit is symbolizes spring and fertility and all this. Um, so no, I don't think you can fully separate. And then it's ingrained in our society, almost like you walk into the pharmacy and like Christmas material, Christmas trees, and then oh, it's Valentine's Day, and then what's the next thing you see is Easter egg coloring kits and jelly beans and uh, chocolate.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, the
Right,
idea of actually actively creating a movement to separate it is certainly beyond
right.
the scope of what I'm thinking. But I'm just wondering if the magic of Easter, I don't know. I just thought it'd be a fun question because as I got older,
Uh,
and I was less involved with the church,
yeah,
Easter became less like tangible for me.
yeah,
Because with Christmas you got the Santa Claus story, and more or less people can agree on what it is about the North Pole, and he's brings the toys and stuff, and you got Rudolph and some stories. But with Easter, it's quite random. There are a lot of stories, a lot of cartoons, but nobody can agree on one probably, you know.
right, right, right.
And so it feels like, what is that? And then no one can really
The
satisfactorily explain why the chicks and the bunnies go with Jesus dying on the cross. It's
I yeah I put it to the resurrection aspect. Okay, like
sure, sure.
rising from the dead, like the earth rejuvenating. That to me is like inseparable.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, you don't have to
Right.
twist my arm, but it's something that I don't know. I always felt like I wanted to go deeper on Easter, and the only way to do that is to get into the religious story.
Yeah.
Like to fast and to really go through the dying with Jesus and the resurrection that brings.
Right.
It's supposed to be actually the most glorious holiday in the whole Catholic calendar,
Yeah.
right?
You're right. The whole Christian calendar. Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
Christian. Yeah. So, um, so another question I have for you is, how do you feel about the secular folklore around Easter? Do you see it as a connection to your paganism?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because the actual how Easter is dated in the Christian calendar is actually really interesting. It's dated by the Sunday. How's it go? It goes like it's the Sunday closest to the full moon, closest to the equinox. I don't. I forget if it's the Sunday preceding or after the full moon, but it's the Sunday near the full moon that's closest to the spring equinox.
Hmm.
Which that is a very that's a very pagan way of reckoning time.
Yeah.
So there was actually there's been controversies in different sects of Christianity as to how Easter was calculated. Like the way people did it in Ireland was different from the way people did it in sort of the Eastern Orthodox Church. That's why when you have like Easter varies from year to year, the dates can vary very widely, and then
Right.
in the Greek Church, it's the timing is different. But yeah, it's a very the actual calculation for the date is a very pagan uh, technique in a certain sense because you're reckoning it with the spring equinox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very interesting.
Right. So I mean, to me, like, yeah, they're very closely intertwined. It's very hard to separate like the pagan undertones, because you got to remember, as Christianity was spreading across Europe, um, one of the techniques that they used was to, okay, they supplanted a lot of the pagan holy days. That's how Christmas was, was the Christmas was moved to correspond with the solstice, so that the non-Christian peoples could more easily convert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to me, they're very intertwined. It's very hard to separate. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We have three of the um, what are those events called? So we have this two equinoxes and two solstices, right?
Right. Yeah.
So Christmas, right on the solstice of winter.
Uh-huh.
Easter, right on the basically equinox of spring.
Yeah,
Halloween, basically right on the equinox of.
that's
Uh,
close. You have
yeah, true. Yeah,
you
that's
have
off by a month, right?
right. You have St. John's Day, which is traditionally it's June 24th, which that's close to the summer solstice.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, true.
um, yeah, it's funny. A lot of the certain dates of certain feast days in the Roman Catholic calendar, they have correspondences to older seasonal observances. That was something I studied a lot when I was reading about paganism.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a very, like, it wasn't a hard transition for me.
Yeah, I could see
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It's funny because uh, depending on the text you read or the time in history, pagans are like the enemy of
Right.
of Catholics or Christians.
Right.
But in a sense, it's really easy to see the connection, right, and to feel
Right.
kinship between them. So another question I have is, do you feel that there's a benefit to, I'm just looking to how to word this, to holidays of sacrifice and reflection, such as Lent,
Right.
usually represent, like the Jewish tradition has Yom Kippur, the Day of
Right.
Atonement, and in Islam there's the sacred month of Ramadan, where there's
Right.
fasting and abstaining,
Uh-huh.
and also self-reflection, similar to Yom Kippur. I know Lent was designed that way on
Yeah.
some level,
Well,
even
Lent
though,
is from what isn't Lent, wasn't it? It commemorates Jesus in the desert, like when the devil tempted him. That's kind of where it comes from. Am I correct?
right, there's the 40 days, right? 40 days in the
Yeah.
desert. And is Lent? Yeah, Lent is 40 days,
Lent is
right? And
4 days. Yeah.
10 days after Easter, then comes the
Pentecost, I think.
right. Yeah, so it's
Right.
50 days equals the Pentecost. Yeah, that's where the Penta comes from, right? The
Uh,
five.
right. But yeah, days of sacrifice. I think, yeah, I mean, like fasting, sacrifice. I'm glancing at my notes here. Okay, you look at, like, if you think, all right, we'll go back to my seed image that I saw the other day. Seed breaks open, or you plant a seed in the earth, or when you want to eat an animal, you have to kill the animal. That in a sense is a sacrifice. So that
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I guess, reminds us of uh, you know something dying to be reborn again. That's a very ancient motif from way before Christianity existed. So
Sure.
it's
Mm-hmm.
the idea of sacrifice to put you in touch with the sacred is very primordial. I actually have personal experience. I tried fasting for Yom Kippur one day because there was one year. It fell on this fall equinox on the first September, the first day of fall. And it was kind of fitting because it's like, okay, that's a day in the Jewish tradition, like you face, to prepare for God's judgment. So I don't know. At the time I was going through it was one of my old coven breakups, as you remember, and I was kind of in that, like, grieving process. So I kind of wanted to, like, help work through that. But when you fast, it's like your consciousness does change in a certain sense. Like when you have, like, the pain of not eating, or yeah, no, it's real. I think when I walked through the creek that day, and yeah, it puts you in touch with, like, the hard steeliness of life in a certain sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're
Yeah.
withholding a certain sense of satisfaction or pleasure, and you are in kind of a altered state of consciousness. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I think you said that well.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a similar story which I want to share.
Yeah.
Actually, as I was doing my Buddhist prayers this morning, chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what we could talk about and really make it meaningful. And I just couldn't help but think about 2009 when I had just broken up with my girlfriend at the time,
Yeah.
and that was Holy Week. And I knew that I wanted to stick with it. I didn't
Yeah.
want to backslide. So I felt like the way to do that was on Good
You went,
Friday.
you went on the pilgrimage to Inwood.
Yeah, to take a pilgrimage and to fast. And that day, I remember, I think I slept at my mom's house that night before, and then I woke up. I think I allowed myself 1 cup of coffee, black coffee, and then I went to St. Thomas Aquinas Church with my mother
Right.
in the
Yeah.
damp, rainy, cold day, one of those like
Right.
cold in your bones day.
Yeah.
And then just we walked around the Stations of the Cross. There was just no glimpse of anything, any pleasure coming to me that day, and I knew it. It was like just an endurance thing, and I figured I had to just take a sojourn. I had to die.
Cleanse your soul. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to die to my former self.
Yeah.
And I took The Nazarene, with
The
me,
Nazarene. Yeah, you told me.
and out of my backpack, I had water. I allowed myself water if so
Yeah.
I wouldn't die. Not that I would die without it, but anyway, and I just hopped on the 2 train or 5 train. I really didn't know where I was going. I just went
You
as far as I can go.
you
I
went
guess
all.
I was
Yeah.
vaguely thinking about the cloisters probably because
Yeah.
that was kind of a
A
free
holy
vibe.
place.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. I've gone to the cloisters a few years ago. I used to go every Good Friday, like the Passion. That's like a holy place to me, which isn't that far from Inwood either.
Right.
Yeah. So like for those of you who don't know who might be listening, like Inwood Hill Park and the cloisters too, like the far north of Manhattan, has like the remnants of Manhattan's like last forest land. So it's a remnant of an old growth forest. So I've had a few experiences up there where I, would go do meditation ritual, and then I had one maybe 2015 where I had a very profound, like I guess, union with the land, the whole island of Manhattan, and you wouldn't think that Manhattan is like a living being. Like, okay, it's concrete and metal and skyscrapers and trains and cars and like millions of people, and that's true. But there is actual land on the island that lives and breathes, and I don't know. It was a very profound gift for me because, like, as a New Yorker, you think, okay, it's totally urban, but it's not totally urban. Even like where we live, Marine Park, we're not that far from the beach. We're 10 minutes from Rockaway. You have the creek. For me, 3 blocks, 4 blocks away, you right across the street. There are pockets of nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, that like the northern Manhattan is like very special to me. Special to us both, as you're sharing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll continue that story a little bit, but you just reminded me that when I
Yeah.
was on a camping trip, high on mushrooms, that you happen to be somewhere in the vicinity.
Yeah.
Uh, anyway, I remember feeling I wandered into the woods without shoes on, kind of totally inhabiting this like forest spirit or something like that. And I went into the woods. I forgot that I was human, and I felt really kinship with the land and the rocks and the trees.
Yeah.
And I was laughing like crazy, and I was crying my eyes out, and I just felt how sad the land is. I really did,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
how kind of angry the land is at
Yes.
humanity.
Oh yeah.
And I was
Manhattan.
standing up into the rocks, and I was
Yes.
looking out at the cars passing by, and it felt so alien and kind of toxic,
Right.
And I was like, then I remembered, oh shit, I am a human, so I shouldn't,
Yeah.
I can't be against the humans. I have to work with them because the trees and the rocks are not going to save me if I fall and break my head. It's
Exactly.
the humans that are going to help me. So I had to remember that, but I did feel the sadness of the land very poignantly.
That is true. Like I remember when I was up in Inwood, that I felt the sadness of the island of, well, Manhattan is the ancient name, and like if you read old old accounts from like Henry Hudson or the Dutch colonists, or like there's a book I have. It's called Manhattan, an ecological history, which is like it's a computer generated map of Manhattan, what it looked like when the Dutch first sailed into the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's a glorious sight. Is the wildlife and the flora and the fauna. It was an extremely diverse place, and because it had to do with like um, where we were situated on the East Coast, and the harbor was like a very spawning grounds for fish. There was an estuary for the Hudson River. It was a very fertile, lush place. So it was like I was feeling all of that, like all the life that this land once had. It's gone, and the land was very sad. So yes, I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah. Wow.
what you're relating.
And I just had a recent experience when I was in Sedona last
Right.
week, 2 weeks ago. We did this medicine wheel ceremony,
Uh-huh.
and one woman, they were allowed to, we were allowed to speak if like the spirit was calling us. And one woman said, like, kind of was crying, like embodying the spirit of the land. She said she felt like an eagle coming by her and wolves around her,
Mm-hmm.
and she was crying like, when do we lose our connection to the land, our land? When do we lose it? We're not connected anymore. And that reminded me of your story and my story when I was in the woods that time.
Yeah.
But it's good that the more people get in touch with that sadness of the land, the more our hearts kind of get
Yeah.
more in harmony with Mother Earth, I think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing. Like when you get, I mean, this is when you get more into like Christian theology or philosophy, like the depictions of like God was always seen as something like apart from the earth or the universe. Like the one image that a lot of people would use was like God is a distant clockmaker. Like, okay, he ordered the universe, created
Right.
everything, then
Mm-hmm.
he's like he sits apart. Like it's a machine almost that he's running, but from a distance. Like when you read about the different pagan deities of like ancient Rome or the Welsh or the Norse, that they were very connected to like physical places or elemental forces. So that is part of, I guess, how kind of how we lost our connection to the land in a certain sense was like when this new religion came along, like a lot of the old spirits, old powers, what they were demonized,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I don't want to attack
Right,
anyone's
right,
religion, but and I know you're not. You're not. You're
right.
just speaking your truth.
Yeah, it was, but yes, it was like a historical fact how how conversion was forced upon certain people. And,
Yeah. Yeah. And I know now in my life, one of the most precious,
mm,
perhaps the most precious thing to me, or that I believe is in freedom of choice.
yes,
And once freedom of choice is suppressed, even in the slightest, the possibility for unconditional love is gone. And
right,
without that, you actually cannot experience true love when freedom of choice is suppressed. So
right,
if someone takes to a religion because of fear or because
yeah,
of some sort of pressure, then they'll never truly, you know, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like ascend to the most highest
right,
spiritual place, because that true love is and unconditional love is necessary in order to do that.
yeah,
Not fear of punishment. That I don't know. Maybe some people are sensitive to that, but that's my sense. But truly believing that all people are equal, I'm coming from there, and that everyone's free to choose what they believe.
right,
And I'm not here to judge and say someone should or shouldn't do something. But when I'm looking at it for myself, and what am I going to choose? I want to choose something that where my freedom of choice is 100% respected. You
right, right, right.
So let's see. I got so. Okay, let me just finish that story a little bit with Inwood Hill.
Yeah, yeah, go
Let me
ahead,
be
go
a
ahead.
little more dig in there. Uh, so I got up there. It was a long ride, as you know, like a 2 hour
Two
plus
hours.
ride. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it's interesting because like you're going up, so I always felt like you're ascending,
Yeah,
whenever I would go there. Because you are traveling north.
yeah, it has that feeling. And then I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't know where the cloisters was. Just that it was at the top of the mountain. So I got up. I think is Inwood Hill the last stop on the
It's the
train?
last stop on the A train. Yeah, so the cloisters is like it's one or two stops before it. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like two stops before it.
I think that's what happened. So I went to the highest stop. I missed the
Yeah,
cloisters. So then I got
yeah,
off, I guess, at Inwood Hill, and there was some
right, right.
Catholic church nearby, and they were marching
The,
around.
it's actually it's funny because there's a Catholic church that it's called Good Shepherd,
Oh, really?
which is interesting because we have a Good Shepherd around here, and then they
Yeah.
have a there's a cross outside of the church that I've seen it because I've been up there like dozens of times now. So they have a cross of it's two beams, two girders from the World Trade Center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's kind of moving. And then again, like that it's Good Shepherd was kind of interesting because we have a Good Shepherd, in our neighborhood.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And that might have been the church I'm thinking about, and they were marching around for Easter, and I somehow got swept up in this parade, and then I ended up going into
Yeah,
the church with them and some service, and didn't stay for the whole thing, but then I went into the park, into the nature, and
yeah.
you
That
know,
that park, man, it has some very old energy. Um,
mm,
yeah, like there's a plaque actually that I don't. There's the whole story of Manhattan being bought for 24 geld or whatever it was in a trade. Like there's a plaque marking that event in the park. That it's
right,
kind of it's on a stone when you first walk in. That I to me personally, it's a very sacred place because that's like when the sovereignty of the island is commemorated there.
mm,
So like one concept that you read a lot about, especially in like Celtic myth, like okay, like sovereignty, the actual figure of sovereignty is a woman or the queen of the land, and for a king to properly rule, like the land goddess has to bestow her favor upon the king.
mm-hmm,
There's like a lot of Irish folk tales about like Irish Welsh or an old hag will tempt a would be knight or a king, and then the knight will kiss the king, the knight will kiss the hag, and then the hag will transform into like a beautiful maiden, and then bestow upon the hero like riches or power or but it's a symbolic representation of the connection human beings have with their territory or the kingdom that they lived on or the tribal area.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I want to ask you when
Yeah,
you said the word sovereignty, I was thinking about that being a sovereign being. It's that word's come
yeah,
up a lot. How would you
yeah.
just define sovereign?
This is a very interesting question because I think about it a lot. Being able to make your own choices, self responsibility. That's kind of how we, as like modern Western European American people, would see it, modern people in general. But like how it was conceived in the ancient time, sovereignty was like the right to rule as a leader, as a king, as or a general, or
Mm.
a priest of some sort. Like you would have right over the people and then right over the territory upon which you ruled.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very interesting concept, especially for me. Like the in the Mists of Avalon, the Arthurian story I was talking about. There's a whole ceremony that takes place about yeah, again, somebody represents the land goddess, and for like a proper coronation to take place, like the king has to lie with the woman that embodies the land.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's something I think about a lot because like the concept to me just speaks to me very very deeply.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess that the modern translation, as you're saying, is like
Yeah.
sovereignty of oneself. So like that you
Yes.
truly
Yes.
rule yourself completely,
Right. Right. Right.
which I would say connects to the whole freedom of choice thing as
Oh,
well,
yeah. Exactly.
and responsibility, 100%.
Right.
Hmm. So, so along that the lines of the story. So then I'm there. I'm in Inwood Hill. I'm walking around. I'm trying to cheer up. I don't know how. I read a little bit of a book. I guess I'm talking to my higher power. At that point, I was still seeking. I was in between religions. I was essentially a Christian, but and really trying to kind of get my experience of Jesus as much as possible in a way. You know, dying to my former self, you could say. And
Mhm.
um, then I was in no rush to go home because I knew I was fasting, and I knew that there was
Yeah.
no girlfriend to
There was
call,
nothing
and
up. Yeah.
there was no food or coffee waiting for me or alcohol, and there was no friend I could even call to talk to at that moment, you know. So anyway, I took the A train all the way back
All the way out to
through,
Rockaway.
yeah, all the way through Brooklyn, through Queens to the last stop,
All the way.
which was Beach 116, which is just a
Yeah.
few blocks away from where my former rock band Level 6 used to practice.
Yeah.
And here I was, Level 6 is gone. My relationship with with my girlfriend was gone, and I'm fasting, and I don't know what, and I'm stuck. I'm not happy with my job, really. You know, I was substituting in the uh,
Yeah.
Department of Ed, and I'm like, just what the heck's going on? But I did feel that I just had to do it. You know, I just
Right.
had to do this cleanse, and
Yeah.
I knew it would get better. And you know, I'm
Yeah.
here. How many years later?
Right.
12 years
Yeah.
later,
No. I.
it certainly got better. You know.
Right. I mean, I no. I had a very mystical experience once with actually taking communion one time. One of the covens I was in. You know the story when I was in one of the groups I was in kind of broke up very violently, and I was going through a very bad grieving period. And I went, where do I go? Like, I needed some kind of connection to. I couldn't deal with anything pagan for a while. Like, okay, back to mass, back to church, back
Hmm.
to Holy Mother Church. And I remember I just sat for mass one day. I was crying, and then like I'd spent enough. It was to the point where I couldn't cry anymore. Like I just was so dejected. Like they talk about stories in Arthurian legend about like the wasteland when the
Hmm.
Holy Grail gets stolen. That's kind of what my life felt like at the time.
Oh,
And
man.
then I remember taking communion and like taking the host and the wine, and then I had like this feeling of like peace and presence. And I swear I heard a voice speak to me. I know your pain. I know your pain. I know your pain, and I know pain. And I saw
Wow.
JC on the cross.
Really.
Yeah, it was. So there's definite like power in the Eucharist. But from that, I had a long grieving period still after that. But from that day, that's when I understood like what like salvation truly meant.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, so, do you fast today, or do you have any like times to do this
Um.
sort of like
So
self?
sometimes I had the chance to go on I went on a Native American vision quest a couple years back, and we worked with peyote medicine, and we did a vision quest. I had to go out into the woods for like literally a few days on my own, no food. So, and that was interesting that came up because it was a 3 day experience. Like again, 3 days. Like I went out, and then a day I was out, and then I came back the next morning. So that was again like the whole idea of like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I lived that myself in my own life.
Wow.
Do I fast today? Sometimes before I'll do ritual, I won't eat anything because when you eat, it grounds your energy. It puts you more in touch with like the physical.
Hmm.
Yeah, so sometimes I'll do it to like kind of people get more on the mental plane.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I haven't fasted since the probably since that time, and I
yeah,
before around that era, I did fasting a couple 2007 to 2009, I guess, but I just haven't been called to. But
yeah.
I do fast. I skip breakfast sometimes, because of as a for
Health reasons.
testing,
Yeah, yeah.
for doctor medical stuff. But
Mhm.
I want to. I want to fast. I'm just not there yet. I want to like incorporate it. I don't know, in a way that because I sense there's something lighter,
Yeah.
about it. Anyway, I'm just curious about that. Um, so another question is, what does Good Friday mean to you today?
What does it mean? I guess it always is a day of like reflection in a certain sense, like you know, like for all the reasons we talked about, like the whole image of like the crucifixion, the resurrection, Christianity, Catholicism. It's still kind of it's still to speak to me on a certain level. One a tradition that we have in my house. I think it's an Italian thing. I'm not really sure because my mom does it every year at the table. She douses us with holy water.
Okay.
But that in a sense is like a ritual. Like okay, water is like cleansing, rejuvenating type of force.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So maybe your grandmother or your mother's
Yeah,
Catholic uh, faith empowered your paganism in a way.
right. Yeah, I definitely had a good foundation spiritually. Can say
Hmm.
that much.
Yeah. Yeah. I did too in my own way.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. I found when I was in Sedona recently on a ascension retreat. So it was a spiritual learning. It's about a lot of things, including leaving the 3D consciousness behind and how to move into 5D consciousness as a people, and us
Yeah.
being the
So
light workers and way showers.
why is Sedona marked as like a sacred place? Like, is it? Can you explain like why it's sort of
Sure. Yes, I
okay,
can. I didn't
okay,
know why. I didn't know why, except in brief, I did a few like kind of spiritual
hmm
vibration raising exercise. I did a rebirth program. I did a few things this year because I really
okay,
wanted to make sure 2021 I was not going to feel stuck and I was not going to feel trapped in old ways of being because I
yeah,
knew those were done for me, but I didn't know how to step into the new yet. So I did some of
yeah,
these programs, including keeping up my regular Buddhist practice and just being myself and writing my autobiography, which has been
yeah,
helping remind myself who I am. So anyway, in January, this guy who was partially living in Sedona, I was doing his program. His name is Aaron Dowdy, and I was just like, wow, Sedona seems so cool, and totally no thought I would be there anytime soon. But like one day I'd like to go there. And
yeah.
then I did a program after that. Then I did a third one, and then right towards the middle of the third program I did, um, these are things just spring up that just happen to be one after the other. I'm like, yes, I just want to just invest
Okay,
in myself, like kind of almost like
right,
going to school for my whole soul and that type of thing.
yeah,
And then I got an email while I'm in
uh,
this third program this year. It was end of February, early March, and the email was from this woman,
yeah.
Nancy Rhines, who is famous for her NDE experience,
Okay,
near-death
need
experience.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she's got a
Right.
good vibe, and I'm on her mailing list. And she said, my spring schedule, I'll be speaking at this place in Sedona. And I just was attracted. I'm like, oh, people are actually really meeting up and talking and getting together in a
Okay,
beautiful place. That's interesting. And so I sent Yoko, my wife, email with forwarding it. Said, I'm 56% serious about going. What do
yeah,
you think? And I said that because there's no good reason to go except I wanted to. And
yeah,
anyway, she said she wanted to. Somehow we made it happen, and Kai, my son, loved it too. So anyway, so now we're in Sedona. Why are we in Sedona? We don't know, but we were just attracted to it.
yeah,
And so now my questions are, why is Sedona the power spot?
yeah.
And so we, on maybe the first day of the retreat, there was a tour afterwards called the Vortex Tour.
Yeah, that's
So
what I've heard. Like there's like energy vortexes or something, power
yeah.
centers. Like I went to Glastonbury in England. That's like another place that is, which I can tell you because I've been to Glastonbury.
Hmm.
There is like energies, weird vortex. There's definitely there's old pagan like druidic sites. You know,
Right, and it's Glastonbury's. Is that where Stonehenge is? I
oh,
don't remember.
it's nearby. It's like southern England, southern England on the
Okay,
border of Cornwall. So yes, like southwest England.
okay. So yeah, I was in Stonehenge myself, and that had interesting energy. So what I learned was, do you know what a vortex is?
Yeah, like bridge between this world, or a portal basically.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to describe it. I also understand it's swirling energy. That's another thing I've heard,
Mhm.
vortex. And the the main thing I learned about vortexes is there are some called ley lines on the
Yes,
planet, and
yes.
these are
Telluric.
electromagnetic frequencies.
Yes, yes. Okay.
So there's magnetic, electromagnetic, electric, and there are different frequencies. So at some point where the like a where they thread together, that
Yeah.
joint part,
Yes.
that can be a
Okay. Okay.
vortex.
Okay.
And so um, I learned that we're all batteries, all beings are batteries, and including the tiniest creatures, and including Mother Earth herself. So by that it means we're these like energy cells, and from a battery has an anode and a cathode. I'm not 100% sure. I think a cathode is a negative, anode is a positive. If it's reversed, just bear with me. But so
Uh,
the uh, the cathode, the negative, uh, sucks energy. It actually
okay.
sucks the energy in. That's why it's being, like an energy vampire is someone you're around,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
take your energy, you don't like it.
Right.
That's what the cathode part of a battery does. And
Mm.
then the anode gives energy out, it pushes energy out. So, and we all like being around people who give us energy, right? Who give us positive energy. So, Earth is like that, and Earth has these energy dynamics similar to a battery. So
Okay.
there are vortexes on Earth that have that are positive, and then there are
Right.
vortexes that are negative. So
Okay.
Sedona is one of the only places, I think, the only place on the planet that has so many vortexes in one spot. There's 7 vortexes in Sedona,
Right.
and it's fairly big, but it's not that big.
Yeah. No, there are other points on Earth like that. Like Glastonbury's another one. Another one I think is so some writers depict it as like the chakra points of the whole Earth.
Hmm.
Another one is I think Easter Island. Another one is Angkor Wat, which is it's in Cambodia, somewhere in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, Cambodia.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. There are other places on Earth that are like this. Like Sedona's
Right.
not the only one.
No, no, Sedona's not the only one, but it is the only one with 7 vortexes.
Right. Okay.
That's
Cool.
what I was told. I mean, I
Cool.
didn't research it.
Cool. Cool.
So,
Cool.
so there are then the places that are negative vortexes are places like Bermuda Triangle,
Uh huh.
and like there are some deserts. I forget the name of them. There
Right.
are a few other places that have this like energy that takes. So you don't actually want to. It's not actually a great place for human beings to be,
Right.
according to what I learned. I don't know.
Ah, I see. Now I understand. Okay. Thank you.
So that's why Sedona is like this. It's a power spot that people are naturally attracted to. So there's a. Did I ever show you like the electromagnetic measuring tool I have, the EMF measuring thing?
Does you have one? No.
Yeah, I do have one. So you can measure how much RF frequency an
Uh
object is emitting. Radio frequency. You can uh, measure how much electric frequency or
uh.
electromagnetic. There's
Right.
4 different things to measure for, and there's this other thing you can measure. I forgot what it is that the guy explained that would measure the power of a vortex.
Yeah. Yeah.
And basically, so whatever this measurement, this unit of measure is, in a normal place, let's say Brooklyn, it might be 30 or 40 of these units per square foot or whatever. In Sedona, it's about 400, 500 per square foot.
Oh,
So the
okay.
energy is literally different.
Cool.
So, and just another thing on that point is that uh, inherently vortex is neutral, but since we're electromagnetic beings and the vortexes are comprised of electromagnetic energies, um, a positive vortex will be an amplifier.
Right.
So if you go that with intention,
Uh huh.
positive intention to heal, to create something valuable in the world, or something positive, contributive in the world,
Right.
it's a
Right.
good place
Okay.
to do that. It manifests things. It helps you manifest by amplifying those frequencies. Yeah.
Right? So
Um,
what did we learn from this little soiree this evening? What was
well,
great.
one cool thing we learned is that we can indeed do these podcasts
Yeah,
at my house. That's kind of fun.
yeah.
I didn't know I had that capability. Uh, and also on a
Ah,
taking,
sorry, my
sure. All right. And on a technical end, I did learn that um, somehow promoting it would probably help to reach more people. People forget, uh,
right.
like if we promote it a half hour before. Anyway, but in terms of what we talked about, yeah, I think we're kind of in agreement that having some sort of a yearly or seasonal reflection period, something that is a little bit more on the heavy side, not just about gorging and partying,
Yeah,
uh, can be good for our soul and help
yeah,
us to, as you said, remember the more harsh realities of human existence, which would hopefully then expand our compassion and humble us in the most in a very strengthening way, fortifying way.
okay. Well, all right. Well, thank you for having me.
Hmm. Yep,
Right.
absolutely. Thanks for tuning in and joining me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no
Any
problem.
last thoughts? Anything else you'd like to share with our friends?
I think just it's important that focus on on commonalities of spirituality rather than the differences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. That's it.
All right.
Common
Well,
root. All right, brother. Thanks so
well,
much for
thank you
joining
for your
me.
time. No
Yep.
problem.
Happy Easter.
You too. Happy Easter.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.
All right, guys. Well, that's about all for today on music, philosophy, and more. And I'll be back this coming Wednesday with my friend Alan to talk about music, philosophy, and more. All right, and thank you all who have watched it on live or who catch in the replay. And thank you, Deanna, for your comments. I appreciated it very much. And hope you're having a wonderful night. No matter what religion you participate in, have a happy Easter and enjoy your springtime. Just see it as rebirth and new life and starting fresh. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great night.